Good, thanks. Thank you so much for that. That was amazing. I'm in the middle of a water fast, so I was feeling really tired at the beginning. And I was like, why did I book this? Like I couldn't even look in fetal position. I was like, oh, but I feel like so much more energized. And yeah, I had sickness in my stomach and it just moved. And I think like, yeah, so thank you so much. It was amazing. I think my question is, I'm really new to all of this. And Christy on here invited me here, so I'm so thankful for her too. Like, what happens in the body for me to be feeling so energized and not sick anymore and like completely different just because I moved? Like, I feel like I've had a massage and I haven't. Like, so I just would love to know a little bit more about, yeah, what happens. And I booked for your Wild Desire as well, so I'm keen to get into that too. But yeah, because I'm just so new, I
Yeah.
don't really understand it, I guess.
Well, there's a few principles behind nonlinear that are very specific about working with the nervous system. You know, the background, there's a long story behind it. I essentially developed this as a means of trauma release for people I worked with, but also for myself because I was in very demanding and very stressful situations. And I have a trauma therapy background as well, you know, from studying. And so what we're doing and what we're accessing is essentially the part of the body, the part of the nervous system that can create homeostasis. So there is fight and flight and feed and breathe, right? A parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system that play together to create really good well-being and that essentially allow the body to release. And so what we're doing here is we're working with these principles to allow your body to right itself, so to speak, right? Within that, this particular technique that I did today has some other, it's fairly, you know, that there's a lot behind it, but has some other components to it that work with the contraction and then expansion. And so, I like this particular way of working a lot because I do it myself, because it allows the natural energy storages in the body to come forth without coming from the adrenals. And that's what's very, very important, that we don't just pull from the adrenals. So in a water fast, for instance, right, you are taxing your adrenals quite substantially, because that's the whole thing. The body goes, oh shit, we're starving to death. But also, you know, then there's something really good about that, giving the body the space to repair and all of that. So you're already working with those principles of extreme stress on the body, but also extreme repair in the body. So this essentially is like a perfect way for you to balance your system, because it has the same components to it.
That's
and
great.
that's why you're feeling good, and let's hope it continues.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's great. Really helped. Thanks.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you. Soundtrack I used is something that was written for me by a friend for my own practice. So it's very, very wonderful. It's not something that's publicly available, but it is very, very dear to me. And in general, the music that I play is all music that I practice to myself. Some of what I played is available, and we have playlists listed on that nonlinear page. And I'm also in the process of compiling one with all my personal favorites. So that's coming very soon. So thank you for asking that, Cassandra. Okay, any hand raises? There is Miranda. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Involuntary contraction on the pelvic floor muscles, yes. But this is the primary reason for why I'm choosing to embark on this new journey. Do you have any advice on how to overcome? Well, yes and no. So, and also she says here, how can I get out of my head to allow my body to take control? Well, how you get out of your head is by doing what we're doing, which is letting the body take over. So when you have these strong vaginal spasms and tension, there is a few things to know about that, and I'm sure you've seen, you know, people up the wazoo for it. But the first thing, and this is really, really, really important, if you do nothing else, you must find out if you need magnesium. In many, many cases, when I've worked with people who had to deal with it, and it can be so painful that you can barely sit, sitting in magnesium, you know, magnesium water, magnesium baths, hot water, loads of really strong magnesium flakes. I can give you my personal recommendation. I get them from Europe in, you know, some very concentrated form. So that's number one, is that you make sure that you in fact have enough magnesium, and you can't take magnesium for your pelvic floor orally. It's not going to work. You have to bathe in it or use it topically, but topically is very rough on the skin. So magnesium salt is really your first and foremost go-to. Then next, getting out of your head, definitely important, but actually moving the way we're moving, and for you then particularly moving the pelvis and really working with the articulation of your pelvis and your pelvic floor and the relaxation makes a huge difference. I've worked with women who've had some pretty serious spasms and things like that, and that does make a difference. There's also people who have used nonlinear during labor, which is the other side of the story, right? There's strong contractions as well. So yes, it can help. And if you want more specific question, you know, specific things that might be a bit personal, you can email me, Brianna. And I don't know if it's Brianna Marie or Brianna. Please email me, and I will go into a lot more detail if that's useful.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you for that. I'm very, very interested in all of this because I work as a somatic experiencing practitioner, the work of Peter Levine and Kathy Kane, and specialize in birth trauma, sexual trauma in women. Also teach an embodiment practice, which is very pelvic centric. And the additional thing that I use is vocalization to shift stuff, you know. But it is very aligned, that sense of moving from the inside out. And I specialize also in preparing women for birth using these practices. But they're powerful because I think when there's trauma, you know, you go and see a therapist, the body's already wrong. It's already, you're already saying that the body's broken. But when you do something like this, which is much more gentle, sideways kind of process, more inadvertent, it just seems to work so much more powerfully. I was kind of surprised, but I don't know why I was surprised either. The other thing I just want to say, I do work a lot with people with developmental trauma, and I have to be really cautious not to overwork their adrenals. So even a session like that, I'm feeling that could be quite a lot for somebody with early trauma and their adrenals are
yeah, I wouldn't say so, because but this is the thing, of course, that we don't talk about in these sessions. In the teacher training, we go there in very, very specific ways. The entire nonlinear movement method is built on no imposition. And so the way it is taught and the way it is worked with, particularly if you would do it one-on-one, which you would do with developmental trauma, is so permissive that it actually does the opposite. It doesn't fry the system. Because I developed large parts of this while working with people who had ritual abuse and sexual abuse in a rehab setting. And so it's very, very non-pushy and you know, we don't put, and I'm on my teachers about this day and night, more or less successfully, depending on who it is, on not imposing at all. Right. And so what typically happens in a solo session, if you would do a one-on-one session, is you would let the person regulate to the point where they can actually feel the difference between the adrenal push and the vitality in the body. And even here, the language is such that I don't push people at all for that reason, because you're absolutely right. It has to be super, super permissive for their body. Yeah.
Yeah. I am interested in your training, but I'm going to your practitioner training. Is the training coming up like a full training, and then you can work with clients one-on-one or in a group?
Certified in the method. It starts September 12th. We've adapted it for online and added stuff to it, and it ends with an exam, and then you're certified to teach. So it's both for people who want to teach, and it's also for people who just want to deepen. And you know, as far as the eyes go, I talk a lot about that in the trainings, about ways to do that, ways to work with it. Even within myself, I'm, you know, when I have a lot of mental stuff going on, I want to open my eyes because I'm still processing. And I work with blindfolds, and I work with all in dark rooms where people can keep their eyes open, but we reduce, you know, the stimulus. There's all kinds of ways that one can work with it. These are general classes, and within that, of course, everybody's free to do what they want to do, and is of course allowed to do whatever they want.
So my experience today was tuning into points of pain, but then getting into my orgasmic energy. And then when you talked about the heart, I went into my grief, because I'm kind of caring for my mother who's got breast cancer. And so that was an interesting journey, but not surprising either, you know, just tuning into body sensation, emotion. But thank you, and I might see you again. Thank you so much, Michaela.
So my question is sort of about a daily practice. I've been doing a daily practice with the same song at the same time of day, just trying to get that habit ingrained. And it may be a bit of a silly question, but I want to know, kind of give a better structure for what to tell myself when I miss a day. Because I don't think the right answer is to, you know, castigate myself, as I have the tendency to do. How do you handle missing a day of daily practice?
Yes, good question. You know, Steve, my co-teacher, has actually recorded something on that. I will find that for you, and we can post that in the follow-up. Because he's kind of a master of creating practice, right? And so I'm quoting him here very badly, because in this particular way, he describes this really, really well. And he's really kind of the guy who he's practiced ongoingly since he was 5. So he's like a, you know, I don't know, a ninja of practice. So, but one of the things he talks about, and then I'll tell you how I do it, but I like his way of saying it, and like I said, I won't do him justice. He talks about that the battle of creating, you know, discipline for daily practice happens on 2 fronts. And one of the fronts is you know, the practice itself and what shows up, and the other one is the doing it, right? And he talks, and I'll find that recording for you. He talks about that sometimes the best you can do is just work on the doing it, and sometimes you can, you know, do the actual practice. And he talks about it mostly in meditation, where he says sometimes your ass just grazes the cushion for a moment, and that's it, right? So there's a lot there to unpack that's really quite interesting if you really want to look at the whys and hows, and I'll find that for you. For myself, how I do it, and something that I've realized in many aspects of my existence, because my life's very, very regimented in the sense that there's a lot going on, is that I don't do things regularly not because I'm not motivated, right? The things that I don't do regularly, it's not a lack of motivation or a lack of willingness. It's usually a lack of prompt. So I'll give you an example of something that I have a very hard time, and that is supplements. Any form of supplement. I just can't do it, right? And so it's not for a lack of wanting, and certainly I could use some for certain things, right? It's just, it's not happening. And so I realized that the reason it's not happening is because I don't have a prompt. I don't see it, it's not happening. I don't have a routine yet. So what that actually means is that I have to have visual prompts, in my case, visual prompts of what needs to be done that isn't my go-to. So I've tried setting alarms, doesn't really do it because there's something else happening. The only thing that works for me is visual prompts. And so what I do is I put the bottles, I do take drops on my desk next to my computer, and that's where it stays. I hate it, I hate the look of it, but I see it so often that it will prompt me and I get it done every day. And so it's the same with a daily practice. You have to have a prompt. So if you know that it's not gonna happen unless you see it, or maybe you have to hear it in your case by recording yourself an alarm, or in your voice, or having a piece of music come on as an alarm or something like that. You could do that. You could, in the iPhones, you can make the alarm any tone you want. You can have a song, your song as the alarm. And as the song comes on, you start moving your body. Yeah. And then when the alarm goes, when that piece of the song is done, you're done. You've done your daily practice. If you then feel like continuing, great. If you don't, you've done your 30 seconds. You've grazed the cushion with your ass. Right? So those are some things. Another thing that I think is really, really important to know, this is more in the kind of cognitive behavioral domain, is that when you want to establish a daily practice, you must praise yourself when you've done it. And you must not be down on yourself when you haven't done it. Because our body mind is like an animal, a dog or something. When you call a dog and the dog comes and then you scream at the dog's not going to come again, right? There's a negative association. If you are not practicing and you're down on yourself, the next time you go to practice, your body flinches, right? So the way you counteract that is you even do your 30 seconds and then you say to yourself, see, I did it. This is so good, right? Like some really silly thing, like good boy, good girl, whatever, right? I'm saying this jokingly towards dogs. I know one can never call oneself girl anymore, but politically speaking, I heard that that's no longer correct. Whatever you want to say, good woman, and really, really praise yourself internally. And then the next time you're thinking about practice, that positive feeling loads up in the body. I used to have to do this for shopping, weirdly enough, many moons ago, when I lived in the middle of Los Angeles. Shopping was the most horrible thing. And it was so bad that I had to, when I would sit in the car after I had loaded my shopping, and I had to go, see, you did it. It wasn't so bad, wasn't it? You did good. Now you have food. So those are some of the things you can work with to make it daily. But I would say prompt to me is the most effective way to get something done.
Good. Thank you so much. This is very helpful.
Thank you. Hey.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Lovely session. That was amazing. I do 10 minutes a day, and the hour is like intense. It's really intense. It's like a power, I love that last question because there's a lot of things that I'm trying to do each day. And it just dawned on me that I don't give myself any praise about doing it. I keep waiting for that moment when it all worked and it's all, and it's all done and all better. And then I can give myself praise, but that doesn't really, now that I'm thinking, when you said that, it dawned on me that doesn't really make sense. That's could be a ways away. So anyway, the couple things I wanted to ask about real quick. Number one, you've talked about the notion of being nauseous and so forth and contraction. And, you know, it's like, like the last time, whatever, 2 weeks ago, I thought I might puke. I mean, it was crazy. And you sort of touched on it briefly in one of your answers. And I just wondered, is there something bodily happening? Like, you know, I find myself sort of either clapping my feet or, you know, sort of hitting the floor a little bit with my feet, whether it be that or puking or whatever. Are there things that we should avoid? You know, sort of, there's a point at which you kind of sort of like dial it back and turn it back. That's question one. And then if you could answer question two, if you have time, which is after the practice, what are some good things to do to maximize, you know, what we just, you know, sort of did?
Maximize what?
Maximize what we did. Like, you know, like, should we drink a lot of water, jump in a pool, what's good to do afterwards to sort of, you know, make what we just did? And
well, water is always good in any form. The pool, a bath, a shower, drinking water, seeing water, all of those things, seeing water as in the ocean or something like that, are good because the nervous system reacts very positively to water. And of course, when you go into, let's say, salt water, either a magnesium bath or salt water, kind of your internal and external water kind of, you know, get to play and exchange, and that's very useful and helpful in general. So that's always something. And often, of course, if you can rest a bit after a session, that's also nice. Today, we did specifically not do a laying down resting because this session was about vitality, but you could then later lay down and that would be fine. So as far as hitting the floor or puking or whatever, right? Vocalizing, somebody was talking about vocalizing earlier. There is, how shall I say this? There is an internal distinction that you learn as you practice for yourself, right? And that is, when do you use sound, motion, you know, loud vocalizing, hitting things as a means to escape what you're feeling? And when does it support what you're feeling or is a natural, you know, like unfolding of what you're feeling? And the only way that you will know that as the practitioner, as the person doing it, is by falling off the cliff both ways, so to speak, right? Where you kind of feel, oh, I was banging, 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 and it kind of numbed me, or it gave me the relief, but then it was still kind of stuck, right? Or, oh, I don't want to make a sound because my kid's in the next room, right? And you hold it in and you can feel the knot that comes from that. So it's really a personal exploration on how much. A lot of people, once they've done a bit of somatic work or some tantra or whatever, err on the side of way too much sound. You know, sometimes have like a whole room sounding like squeaking doors, or, you know, multi-orgasmic fakesters, things like that. And at that point, you'll have to dial it down, right? Because you're throwing off. And then at other times, people really need to be encouraged because their voice and their expression is very locked. And in one-on-one work, that's easy to tell, but in group work, and what's good about group work, particularly like we're doing now in your own room, in your own house, in the place that you practice, is that you kind of have the induction, so to speak, to the deeper practice, and then you can just experiment. And you'll just experiment with how it feels afterwards, how it feels during. And it's a bit of a trial and error on purpose because, as I was saying earlier, we're trying to avoid imposing on you. And that is also true for yourself. You know, you're invited not to impose on yourself. But that means ever so often we'll make a mistake, right? That's why I say fall off the cliff this way, you fall off the cliff this way.
Sure. Makes sense. Thank you.
I'm new to this as well and wasn't sure about what to expect, but couldn't believe how my body knew how to relax on its own. Yes. I had really tense feeling on my shoulders during the whole session. Most of it went away, but I can still feel the left side. I was wondering if that's normal, that not all the feelings and contractions go away. Yes, well, it depends on how much you have there, number one, right? Sometimes it might take a few weeks for stuff to move, but also sometimes, you know, it might just take another few hours of, for it to move out. Sometimes tension comes back because we pop into in the same kind of habit patterns. But what you're learning is that your body is naturally intelligent. And with that, of course, you can really work with things. There's something else that I want to mention, and that is that when you do this kind of practice, you're actually sensitizing yourself to the sensations in your body. And what sometimes happens is, sometimes happens to people after massage as well. So you come out of a massage more tense than you went in, but it's actually not, or more achy than you went in. It's actually not that you're more achy, it's just that you're so much more sensitized, so you can feel deeper layers of your tension and contraction. So if you feel that your left side still needs something, you can continue moving a bit. You can have a shower. You can just give that side a bit more attention. But it also tells you that there's probably areas there that could use a bit of extra exploration. So it's normal that not everything goes away. And of course, you know, sometimes there's things that need a chiropractic adjustment, or, you know, this isn't a heal-all. You know, as much as I would like it to be, it's not a heal-all, right? There's other things at play. But I think the fact that your body really knew how to relax is super encouraging. And I'm very happy for that. So thanks for that question.
Hi, Michaela. Hi, everyone. I've been doing this practice for a little while, and I really don't seem to be able to tap into my emotions. I feel like there's releases. I seem to cry and gag and choke and cough, but I really find it hard to pinpoint emotions, and I wondered if there was a trick to finding them, or does it matter? I just wondered.
Doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. The naming the emotions in the context of this practice is a bonus. If some people get too heady, then it's not a bonus, right? Then I have to encourage them to not actually classify everything. For the most part, our emotions and sensations are there's so many subtle layers, and they're layered upon layer upon layer. You might be angry, but under the anger is really sadness, but under the sadness is really despair, and under the despair there's actually some strength, and under the strength, you know, so there's all these things. They're very, very subtle. They're usually not, you know, most people don't just experience tremendous rage all the time or something like that. That you can probably name. But the stuff that is sediment in our body, so to speak, and that you sift through when you move, and you've done this for quite a while, it's unnameable, so to speak, and mysterious, and it doesn't actually matter because your body knows what to do, and you're just going along for the ride, so to speak. In other modalities, you would maybe name things because you're working with origin, but not in this modality, right? So it's really actually better if you can't pinpoint it, because you don't also stick a pin in that, right? When you pinpoint something, you are kind of holding it there, and it might already be willing to just move along. So yeah.
Thank you.